Hey, welcome to our first Q&A on our rainy day. We had tornado warnings and flooding in Oxnard, but we made it and we're here. Got the doors open, getting busy. Lights are flickering. So welcome to Stormwatch 2023 here in Ventura and Oxnard. Let's start with the Q&A. Let's go. We got questions coming in from, let's see, we'll go with the first one from Eric on Instagram. Eric says, when it comes to pre-existing airbag systems that still work fine but are getting old, do you need to redo the entire system, or is it possible to just upgrade, modernize the existing system? Great question. You said it's working fine, but things are getting old. So it sounds like things maybe are showing their age. If they're showing their age and functioning fine, like valves, you're fine. You can keep running that stuff. Bags, if they're showing cracking or any type of rubbing, absolutely time to get rid of those things. Airline, I mean, depends on if it's rubbing or anything like that. I've never really seen airline just get old and crack. I'm sure it happens in maybe drier conditions like in the desert. Another thing would be compressors. Compressors over time, they don't put out the CFM, that would be the amount of flow out of them like they do when they're brand new. That slowly deteriorates over time. Also depends on how old that system is. If you're running some old Thomas or Firestone compressors, those are just outdated, and the stuff that's out now that was the same price those were new years ago are much better. They're 4 times faster. Actually, I think more than that. I think they're almost 8 times faster now. Yeah, so I would say if you're happy with it, fix what's there, sure. But I would just defer to a professional opinion. You know, take it to somebody that's been doing this. People like myself, we've seen all types of different brands and we know the reputation of certain stuff. So we could tell you, oh, hey, that's going to stop working, or hey, these are great. These are old and they're going to work forever. Don't even touch that. Probably 50% of the work we do here is an existing air ride system is in the car, and we're either fixing it or gutting it and starting over. So we've seen a lot of that come and go. And over the years of doing this for 20 years, I've seen plenty of that. Another thing too is if your system works fine and maybe you're just looking for something to do and want to upgrade it, you can add AccuAir to your system. So, well, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but if you have those brass valves, those old fast brass valves, you can run an AccuAir system with that. If you have hydraulics, you can run an AccuAir system with that. You could even just upgrade your switch box inside your car or truck, and it might feel like you're treating yourself, and it might feel like a brand new air system when you're just looking at something different. That might be nice. That would be my suggestion, is maybe treat yourself with a couple little things, or maybe upgrade to get better features. Maybe you want to speed up the tank's fill time. You know, there's a lot of stuff to consider. But I would defer to a professional opinion before wasting a bunch of money on an air ride system. Okay, next question. Let's go to, all right, so my buddy Cody says, he's trying to throw me a curveball with this, but I can make something out of this. So he says, can you tune my mountain bike's air suspension? For any of you who don't ride mountain bikes currently, there's been air suspension on mountain bikes for a long time, and it's gotten very good. I used to race mountain bikes with Cody, and up until recently I was riding still and keeping up with what's going on. So it's funny he's saying this just to throw me a curveball, but really, so air suspension on a mountain bike is a pressurized system. There's a rear shock, front forks, and all that stuff has to have certain PSI. The volume inside the fork has to be a certain volume. Why I'm mentioning this is because all that stuff is relative to air suspension on a car. Riding mountain bikes helped me understand automotive suspension even better. It helped me understand things like rebound, compression, the volume size like I was talking about, PSI, sag, which would be our ride height, you know, stuff like that. Spring rate is immediate. All this stuff is immediate feedback, and it's not just driving down the road. It's coming through your arms and your legs, so you do learn a lot. So I could tune his suspension. Cody's been doing it a long time. He probably could do it as good as me or better than me. So I think he's just trying to get me to talk about it, and I'm happy to talk about it because honestly, things like mountain bikes, RC cars, those things will teach you a lot about suspension, and you can apply them to a vehicle. You can look at pre-runners and see how their suspension works through the desert, and that translates right over to those little RC cars. It's just happening a lot faster. But if you start messing with stuff, you can see the characteristics of the car start changing immediately. Especially on an RC car, you can mess with toe, camber, anti-squat, all that kind of stuff. That's the same stuff on a truck or a car. You can set the same stuff up on a car like you can on an RC car. So mountain bikes, absolutely, we could tune it for you, but yeah, funny question. Okay, and then finally, question from Tim up in Washington. He says, heim joints, Johnny joints, or bushings for links? When is it appropriate for each? Great question. My go-to would be to run some type of poly bushing. They will allow some deflection. They'll eat up some of the road vibration. The ride quality will feel a little softer. If you want to spend more money, you can get heim joints. You've got to get the good heim joints. You can't buy the cheapy cheaps. You know, you got to get something with, there's a Teflon lined one, and then there's a Kevlar lined one, which are good. Those, if you're not spending at least 25 bucks a heim joint, it's not worth your time. You can fit those into tighter spaces, so you can do a smaller poly, but it's just not that much polyurethane in there, and they will wear out prematurely. So I would suggest a heim joint in a situation where you can't get something in there. Also, a heim joint is better when you have a lot of articulation, which means you're going to put those bars into a bind. They're great for, say, a 3-link or a 4-link, not parallel 4-link, but like a triangulated 4-link. They would be helpful. But if you're going to have a lot of we've used them on certain systems, like we've done Lincolns that use them on the uppers. We've done, who else did we just do? We did, someone else had, the T-Bird system we designed. Those have heim joints on the uppers. Those are short throw bars, and they have a lot of articulation that's needed, so we went with those with misalignments. If you do heim joints and you have to run a misalignment spacer, it starts to get pretty expensive pretty quick, because you're buying, let's see, if two link bars, that's going to be 4 heim joints. If you're going to do 4 link bars, that's 8 heim joints. So you're talking at least 200 bucks right there in heim joints. Plus you need jam nuts. And if you're doing misalignment spacers, price just keeps going up. So, but the benefits of a heim joint too is it's going to be more rigid. So for racing, tracking it, autocross, stuff like that, you're going to have more performance in those link bars. I know there's Delrin, which also would replace a poly, but they have no deflection. Those that actually can be more of an issue with 4 links, because they all do need to twist and deflect a little bit. But fortunately, there is a in-between, which is what he mentioned, Johnny joints. So Johnny joints were invented by the Curry family, and I forget which member in the family invented them, but it might be John Curry, right? Hence Johnny joints. I don't know. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. Anyway, those are a kind of a hybrid between a spherical bearing, which is a heim joint, which a heim joint is just a spherical bearing encapsulated inside of a rod end, essentially. And then, so with a Johnny joint, you're going to have poly around the outside, you're going to have something in the middle with a spherical bearing, and it's going to still give you all that twist and articulation you need. But you're also going to have the characteristics of the poly, which is going to eat up the road vibrations and give you a little bit more of a comfort ride. You're going to see those a lot in off-road applications, especially the big ones. We've been using them on a system that we work with JG Designs on some of them, and we've encouraged him to start using Johnny joints on his trailing arm systems, which allow a little bit more articulation than just a poly bushing. And you can also adjust the link bars. I think really, it's just going to be up to application. If you're going to tell me you're going to put a triangulated 4-link into the back of a truck, there's probably 39,000 different ways to do that, based on how high, how low, where you're going to put it. You know, there's lengths, there's so many different variables. But if you're going to consider the top 5 ways you're going to install a 4-link, let's say my go-to is going to be poly. And if I'm concerned about articulation and bushings binding, I'm going heim joint. So only in places I need to. And if budget allows it, let's go Johnny joint. that's, you know, a great option too. And you could just do a Johnny joint on one end and you could get away with it. But yeah, I think that's it. The rain's picking up. I think that's my cue to wrap this up. I hope the rain wasn't too much of an audio disturbance. This has been fun. Let's do another one next month. So start brewing up some ideas you want to ask me for the next one. We'll see you guys on the other side, and literally next year, because it is December 21st. Yep, 21st. And I'm not going to be here. I'm going on vacation. So I'll see you guys after the new year.